Welcome to MMA on the Rocks. My name is Bill Welker. You are listening to episode 332 of the podcast. Today is Sunday, October 1st, if you can believe it's October already. No UFC this weekend, but we did have some bare knuckle action. We had PFL. We'll get into that a little bit later. I have a very special guest today. You guys know I don't do a whole lot of interviews, but I had to reach out to this person. Former professional mixed martial artist, professional boxer, undefeated bare knuckle boxer turned bare knuckle commentator, former Senate candidate, and a whole ton of other accolades I'm sure I'm leaving out, but we're going to try and cover a lot of it today. Mr. Chris Lytes Out Lytle. Chris, thanks for joining me today. I appreciate it, my man.
Man, thank you for the great intro, having me on as well. So, yeah, you're obviously a big fight fan, and as am I. So let's do it.
Yes, sir. And you and I actually have some contacts in common and a few other things in common that I'm going to get to as we go. But I have to start with, and I don't mean to bury the lead, but the main reason I reached out to you is because I saw you have a bourbon out.
Yeah.
So on this podcast, we're all about, we're over the top, under the influence. It's all about whiskey and fights here. So it just seemed to be the perfect opportunity to reach out. I had to ask about it. I tried my darndest to get a hold of some of it before we spoke. But I'm down here in Florida. It seems to be local to Indiana. But I wanted to ask you, how did you get linked up with Gem City Spirits? How did this all come about?
Well, what happened was, I'm a bourbon fan, obviously, and one of my friends lives down in Franklin, Indiana. I train with him some. He has a bar. So after we train, we go over there and we just kind of hang out, have a couple drinks, try different things. And one night we're sitting there, I think after some fights, and we're drinking different bourbons and whatever. And, he started talking about, I could get you your own label. And you know how sometimes you'll be drinking with a friend. You're like, tomorrow we're going to get up and run 5 miles. And like, yeah, just these plans that never happen. Well, like this one, actually, the next day I called him. I was like, hey, man, were you serious about that? And he's like, yeah. So then we started going places, looking for barrels, and just tasting different things. I found what I liked, and we made our own, found the recipe for what I like, and then kind of reverse engineered it and made something. And, I was with Gem City early, but now I'm with a different group. I knew very little about the alcohol industry. So,
okay,
distillers, distributorship. I now go through something called the Moon Drop, which is a much superior facility in my opinion. And I had for the first year I had it's called Indiana Small Batch, was my distributor.
Okay.
Well, the thing I didn't realize, people think you own your alcohol. No, I have to buy it from the distributor. I can't buy it from you have to buy it from the distiller.
Mm-hmm.
I can't personally buy it from the distiller because I don't have a distributor license. So they have to sell to the distributor, and they have to sell to a liquor store, and they have to sell to me. There's a lot of hands that has to go through. So I went through the Indiana Small Batch because, there's several reasons, but I thought, okay, now one of the big guys, one of the big distributors is just going to shelf you and not care because you're not going to. Anyway, I went with them, and then come to find out when I was trying to go to Florida, they go, well, you can't go to Florida, Chris. I go, why not? I had a bunch of people wanting to buy it there. They go, do you have a distributor in Florida? I said, well, Indiana Small Batch. Like, no, they're an Indiana company. You need to get a distributor in Florida. So I was like, damn, how do I do that? And I had to, go through the government and all that. So I'm like, geez, it's a pain in the ass. So I'm in the process of right now getting a thing worked out with a different distributor where they're in more states. Southern, they're very big. And then at the same time, getting involved with a place where I can ship a bunch of my liquor to Washington, D.C., and they have a thing where you can ship it if somebody orders it to any other state. So I'm in the process of trying to work that out. But once again, just my ignorance when I got involved with the liquor industry that I told them I was going to go to Florida with a bunch of cases, and they said, great, Chris, that's bootleg, and you're going to get arrested. So I was like, it'd be kind of cool to have bootlegging on my resume of charges, but I decided not to.
You've done pretty much everything else. You might as well add it on there. It's crazy how in the weeds it gets because prohibition was, over 100 years ago, and we're still dealing with all these regulations. I'm pretty deep in with the spirits industry. So I know about all the red tape and things like that. And hopefully you're able to jump those hurdles and get it down here to Florida.
Yeah.
But so it's 100 proof bourbon. Since it's not widely available, once it is, though, I'm sure people are going to be looking for it. Lots of fight and whiskey fans, and there are a lot of us because they're the only people that watch this show. People who seem to fall into one or the other or both.
Yeah.
What were some of your favorite bourbons, before you decided to create your own label, just so people can get an idea for kind of your palate when it comes to bourbon and what you were looking for when you made yours?
Well, it's a high rye content, which I like. That it's very smooth. It's funny. I remember forever I was always trying to track down, the Pappy Van Winkle, which I've been able to find some, which I'm obviously a big fan of. But there's a lot of different things I like. I live very close to Kentucky. I get to go down and, do the Bourbon Trail and find lots of, Blanton's and Angel. I mean, just a lot of different kinds, but mine's fairly unique, I think. But it's 100 proof, but it's very smooth, like I said. But it's a little spicy taste with that high rye content. But it's still 75% corn, so it is a pretty unique blend. But the thing that everybody talks to me about is just how smooth the aftertaste is, and sometimes you take it and it's kind of harsh, and not this. For 100 proof, it's very smooth.
Okay, that's good to know. That sounds like something that would be right up my alley. That high corn content, and then the rye to bring the spiciness, and then it smooths out at the end. That sounds beautiful.
Well, man, what I love to do is I either drink it neat or I get like a big fat ice cube and just let it chill for a little bit and sip it. And everybody likes to mix it and make old fashions or whatnot. They're all right, but I mean, I just kind of drink it straight, man, and just let it marinate and sit there. It's kind of my favorite way to do it.
That's the best way. And
agreed.
I tell people all the time, the name of the show is MMA on the Rocks. I drink my whiskey neat, but MMA neat would have been a stupid name for a show. So, I went with the catchier title, but in all fairness, I prefer my whiskey neat, just like yourself. You know what I'll do sometimes in the summer? It gets real hot down here in Florida. Yeah. Instead of ice, I throw some frozen cherries in the bourbon.
That'd be nice. Nice.
And they melt real smooth, doesn't water it down, chills it. And then I like bourbons that have that kind of cherry profile to it.
Now, what I promise, what's going to happen, I got to call my guy today just to see where our progress is on that. But as soon as I get that, I'll put it out on Instagram and Facebook and everything. Like, hey, you can order it now through this link, and I got to get one to you because, I mean, I was not about to go put on a product that wasn't, in my opinion, just superior. I think it's what I like. I went around and tested 100 different things and said this is the kind of formula I like. Reverse engineered it and made a few tweaks and go, okay, this is really what I want. And so it's what I think's best. That doesn't mean what everybody thinks. Everybody's a little bit different, but I think it's a very good product, good quality product.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's good to know that you actually put that time in. It sounds like a rough job, man. Like, oh, I got to try my 100th bourbon.
Man, the only hard part was convincing the wife. This isn't fun, honey. I don't want to go do this. I have to go taste a bunch of these today because you can't taste. I mean, man, you wouldn't think just taking little drinks like that would do much. Oh, it does. So, I mean, you can't do it all in one day. It takes several days. So after you try 10 of those and tell me the difference, it gets to be a little hard. Everything starts tasting, very good. You have to be very, it takes a while.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Those 100 proof bourbons will add up.
Those 118 proof bourbons, and there's different kinds. Man.
Sure.
You try everything, and you're like, man, this is what I want.
Yeah, I mean, I know you've never been knocked out, but a man can only drink so much bourbon. Still,
I've been put down with some alcohol, with some bourbon. Yeah, you got to be careful. Even with this, I remember like the first bourbon signing I did. I went and we sold like 100 bottles within like an hour, just a bunch. And people kept buying me drinking because we had it for sale at the bar as well. So I'm doing some drinks and sitting there talking to people, and people come up to me talking. I'm looking around. I probably had 4 or 5 drinks. Next thing I know, I go to get up. And I was like, oh, wow, this kind of hit me. my legs weren't all the way there. It's like, man, I didn't think I had that much to drink, but 100 proof, it's no joke.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's great to hear that you were so involved with the process and that you're actually someone who appreciates bourbon, because a lot of times you see these celebrity brands, they put their name to something and it turns out to not be a great product, or they weren't that involved, or they don't even
Yeah.
drink. Um, all kinds of stuff. I mean, you've been in the entertainment business long enough to know how it goes. But I'm sure people will appreciate hearing that you were so involved in that process.
Yeah. Well, 100%. Hopefully people, like I said, I want people to try it and be like, man, this is fantastic.
Yeah. So I want to change gears on you a little bit. I know how folks around the firehouse enjoy drinking. When I lived in New York, I was a volunteer firefighter myself for 7 years.
Nice.
I know you've been a professional firefighter for a long time. Um, so the question I want to ask you is, because I know what the answer is for me when it came to my martial arts experience. Do you feel like your training as a firefighter helped you as a martial artist in terms of training for a confined space and dealing with being uncomfortable, or just the pressure of being in a live fire, things like that? Did you find it helped you out at all throughout your career?
I kind of think not the opposite's the right way to put it, but in a different way. I think me being a fighter helped me with the fire department because I was a fighter first.
Okay.
I started fighting in '98. I didn't get hired till 2001. So, but I'd already I was already used to being squeezed and put in like a tight position, trying to get out of a headlock and trying to deal with high pressure situations and all that. So I've been already involved with that for not. I mean, I was a wrestler too, so I'd had years and years of that kind of training. So I felt like I had a huge advantage in recruit class and just even doing fire department different trainings because I'd already been doing this for years. So, but they go hand in hand. I could see how one would help the other. But I had already been doing the fighting first, so I felt like I already had that base, and it helped me with the fire department.
So do you think it also helped in terms of like nerves, like going into a live fire, first time you went in, you're like, "Oh, I've already fought in a cage around the world," or did you still have that kind of, anxiousness?
uh, I would say it helps, but I mean, like, if you get in a weird situation in a fire, that's all out the window. You know what I mean? Because at least in a cage, you're gonna live.
Sure.
Like,
Sure.
there's a referee there that can always stop. You're gonna live. But I mean, in a fire, we get people who, yeah, fall through the floors and fall through the roof. Those are really the main ways people perish or really get severely hurt.
Right.
But I mean, that happens. You walk into a room and the floor's been burning for a long time. You don't know it, and next thing you know, you're in the basement. You might not make it out. So that's more of a life threat than being in the cage. So it's just like everything in the fight, but amplified a lot. You know what I mean? Because lives are on the line.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that's not for everybody. It's interesting that you said it was actually the reverse, because now I'm thinking about my own experience again. And I grew up wrestling too. I had my face mushed into the mat for many years,
Yeah.
and it that mentality that you get from that probably really did help when you're going through. You got your mask blacked out and you got your respirator going, and they're making you crawl through obstacles, and they drop the floor out on you and whatever else they do to
Yeah.
mess with you while you're going through that. Yeah, that's interesting that you brought that perspective. So I'm glad I asked that question.
Me too.
So let me talk about your fight career a little bit. So you take your first mixed martial arts fight. Seems like it was a local show in Indiana, and then your next fight, you're in Japan fighting for Pancrase.
See, this is where the internet gets it wrong. Totally untrue. I'd had at least 10 fights before I went to Japan.
Okay.
What happened was, unfortunately for me, I've had somewhere between 18 to 20 fights that aren't on my record, all wins. Like I never lost outside of a big organization, but like they went through and eventually kind of got rid of all the fights that weren't in sanctioned areas or sanctioned events.
Right.
Well, back in the '90s, there was no sanctioned. You know what I mean? So
Sure.
I fought at a lot of things, and people are like, "Well, were they pro or any?" Well, there wasn't any really pro. I mean, I got paid, so I think they were pro. But I mean, So I had a lot of fights before then, but the first one on record, I had one fight in like a real organization, and then but I was already like 10-0 before I had that fight.
Yeah. Hey, I'm glad I asked this question too. All right, strike 2 on my research. It was a
But
Gem
no,
City
I mean that's
thing, and
not
now we
your
got this.
research. That's what it says. I mean that's what Tapology everything says. But
Sure.
there was a lot of shows before that I was on that weren't. I got paid for it in little tournaments and stuff. They just don't. They're not existent because we were unsanctioned area.
Yeah, I mean, if it makes you feel any better, I don't have anything on Tapology because none of my fight experience was sanctioned, or it was all smokers and local stuff. And um, in any case, I'm glad you cleared that up. So
Yeah.
how did you go from, so even still 10 fights, local circuits in Indiana? How did you end up in Japan?
Back then, when I first started training, there was a guy named Jason Godsey, and he was the local guy, but he was like a school teacher. But man, he was fighting over in Pancrase. I was like, over in Japan. I was like, wow, man, I want to do that. And, his manager Phyllis Lee, she was around, and he started telling us. I had a couple fights, probably like 3-0, and he starts telling Phyllis, "Hey, you got to watch this guy. He's pretty good. He could, maybe want to get him over to Japan." Well, she'd come to some of the fights, and I just kept winning. And I remember after that the bigger fight in Muncie, that guy was a lot bigger than me, and they were like, "Hey, this guy was good. He fought in the Abu Dhabi. He beat Oleg Taktarov," and they were like, "Hey, if you fight and beat this guy, man, we'll get you over to Japan." So I was like, "All right." Won that one fight, and she was there, and she's like, I'm gonna get you in Japan." I was all excited.
And that wouldn't be the last time in your career that you would fight a bigger opponent. I mean, you went through the gauntlet throughout your MMA career.
Sure.
This may be wrong too, but according to the internet, you fought over 4 different weight classes, and you even fought at heavyweight at one point.
Well, in a way, yes, in a way, no. Back then in Japan, they didn't have any weight class. I mean, it was open weight.
Okay.
I think the first guy I fought he was over 200 pounds, so that would have been considered heavy. He was over 205, so that would have been considered heavyweight. But I was about 175 pounds. You know what I mean? He was a lot bigger than me, but that was kind of the thing over in Japan. I mean, I remember I saw one of the fights. A guy named Ishii. He was actually one of the only guys they fought who I was bigger than, but he fought a guy who was about 100 pounds bigger than him. They love the David versus Goliath. It wasn't all about winning and losing there. It was about that Bushido warrior spirit, going out there and putting on it and trying. I love the mentality there. It was great. So yeah, they relished in having a big guy fighting a smaller guy. They did not care about weight class.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about the show over there. I was just on another podcast the other day, and I was talking about, I actually had the opportunity to go over to Japan and watch a UFC. It's a totally different experience.
Wow.
This was about 8 years ago. They did a fight night there. It was Roy Nelson and Josh Barnett.
Okay.
And I remember the crowd would just be silent, and then somebody would pass guard or something, and you'd hear golf claps around the arena, and they really understood and appreciated it.
So weird. You'd be in a fight and go back and watch the old VHS tapes, because that's what they send you later on, a tape of it. Before DVDs, I think they'd send you a tape and you watch, and people would be amazed. Like, yeah, you're in the ring and you can hear the fighters breathing hard, and you can hear every word my corner would say. Past like, yeah, there'd be nothing, and then you almost get in a submission, and they start clapping. Oh, then you get out, and then they clap, because it's like they appreciate, like, he's going to get submitted. They understood it very well, but they were so respectful, man. And you'd have to love going over to Japan. Just all they cared about was effort and how hard you tried. Like I said, the warrior spirit. If you came to fight every time, they were going to love you. If you were really good and athletic, but you just didn't have any heart, they're not going to care for you. I mean, I don't know. They were just they seem like I really appreciate it. And you talk to a lot of guys who love the way that Pride did things and the way that their organization was ran, and not as much like the UFC. UFC, it becomes about one thing and one thing only: winning, which is why you get boring fights sometimes. You get somebody's like, I gotta win at all costs. I'm gonna take him down. I'm gonna hold him to his leg. I'm gonna out jab him. If you do that in Japan, you're gonna get yellow carded and fine money. They don't want you to do that. They want you fighting, and that's why a lot of people love that product compared to the UFC.
Yeah, absolutely. I was a fan of the yellow cards. That led to some wild interactions. I mean, sometimes they weren't always warranted, but it always made both guys go like, oh shit, we gotta go here. This is gonna cost us money.
Cost me money, exactly. Going to take 10 or 20% of your purse. I can't remember what it was, but yeah, that'll get you fighting. And so, and Pride was smart. They didn't have win-loss bonuses typically, I don't think. Just one of the guy I knew who was in there didn't have that. So it's like you're gonna get paid flat fee, which makes it like not once again this win at all cost mentality. Like it makes you, and you're gonna get your contract's gonna go up if you fight well. If you fight the way they want, they're gonna give you more money. So it made sense to go out there and put on good fights.
Yeah. Are you a fan of that model? I'm assuming you are.
Oh yes. Oh yeah. I mean, I'm all about entertainment here. I mean, what I'm against is the win at all cost mentality, where it's like I don't want to see it. The people want to, just like Floyd Mayweather. He's probably the best boxer, but I don't want to see him fight. I mean, when he fought Pacquiao, it was a horrible fight. He puts on horrible fights. I want to see. I'd watch Arturo Gatti, Mickey Ward every day. I'll watch a replay of that before I watch Floyd Mayweather fight. I just don't care. I mean, He's technically good, yes. But, I mean, he's not going to put on an entertaining fight. I mean, what are we doing here at the end of the day? We want to be entertaining people. And that's one of the reasons I don't want to jump ahead. I'm sure you're going to get to it. But that's why I'm loving the BKFC and the bare knuckle. To me, it's not an athletic contest. It's still a fight. That's one of the few places people still come to fight.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know the caliber of guys that are going into that because I train with a bunch of them down here in Florida. Some names I'm sure you're familiar with. Yeah. But yeah, I'm an advocate of that as well. And far be it from me to say I'm not the one getting in there, but I just from a logistics standpoint, it would seem to make sense. Guarantee somebody the money, because then you get guys who, and this all too well, you get guys who get screwed in decisions or a close fight, and then it's on a judge to decide if this person gets double their money or not. And I've been an MMA judge before, so I don't want that responsibility. I don't want to, take food off your table.
And I had one fight, for the Ultimate Fighter where the winner got about $250,000, the loser got 10. Lost a split decision. Tell me that doesn't affect the way you fight. I fought a terrible fight. So did my opponent. We both fought scared to death to lose. That's the last time I did it. I was like, I don't care anymore. I'm not gonna fight, because then I got nothing. I didn't feel good about how I fought. I didn't feel good about the money I got. So after that, I was like, you know what? I mean, I'm just gonna fight, and if you lose, you can't. It is what it is, man. You can't go out there with that I got to win mentality. And I'm sure I could have won a couple more fights if I would have tried to do it like that. But I was going to try to knock you out or submit you, and that was it.
Well, I mean, fortunate for us MMA fans that you had that revelation and would go on to put on so many great fights after The Ultimate Fighter. But let me backtrack a little bit, because in 2016, you became the Cage Rage welterweight champion. Was it right after that you got the call to do The Ultimate Fighter?
You mean 2006?
Yes.
You said 2016. Okay, yeah.
Yes, 2006.
Man, I can't remember exactly when it was, but yeah, it was in 2006 when I got the call. I do remember that because I just moved into a different house. I was making not very much money. With UFC, didn't pay very good that time, but I remember getting the call, talking with Dana White and how much it was going to pay, and I was like, Jesus, this could be a game changer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was the only one working in the household. I had 4 kids, and I was full-time firefighter, but I was also fighting just to make sure that one person's not able to support 6 people anymore with the fire department job. It's rough, so I had to have more income coming in. So, but that fight could have been game changer.
So was it a no-brainer to accept? Because again, you have to go away, be away from your family for so many weeks, and to do this show. And obviously, you have to bet on yourself going into a situation like that you're going to come out, making that money at the end of it. How is that decision-making process?
Well, only the tough part, talking to the wife, having 4 kids, and saying, hey, I'm going to leave for 7 weeks.
Yeah.
You take care of these 4 kids, and then talking to the fire department and be like, hey, I know I work here, but I need 7 weeks off. It's just
sure.
There was a couple hoops to jump through, but I was very fortunate. My wife knew. She's like, well, when we sat down and talked about it, I was like, just the chance to win that kind of money would be, game changer for us in the fire department. I had such a good chief. I remember he was like, we'll talk to the counsel, make sure we can get you off. And you're like, if not, you have to do a bunch of trades, man. He was like, I'll even work for it if I have to. You have a big opportunity. You have to take advantage of it. And I'm like, wow, what a cool guy to say stuff like that. I mean, I'm all about that. So I feel like I try and do the same now, pay it forward in a way. Like if somebody, I'm doing these tryouts now for the BKFC, and I'm just trying to give people a chance. I'm giving them. I can't make them work for them, but I can give you a platform to do something. And it's up to you now, but I like trying to give that opportunity to people.
That's awesome, and that's what I've always loved about the fire service. It's that brotherhood, everybody looking out for each other. Oh, you got an opportunity to go to the UFC? Yeah, we'll cover your shifts. We'll let you do that. So I love hearing stories like that, and that's what I loved about being part of that as well. Everybody was always got each other's backs, and we still do. I'm still very close with a lot of the guys I was in the department with back home, and if we had volunteer firefighters where I live now, I'd probably still be doing it.
Nice.
So I said in the beginning, you and I have a lot in common. We actually indirectly have a coach in common. I teach Muay Thai at City of Dong Clearwater. We're the only City of Dong affiliate in Florida. So obviously we're under the umbrella of Mark Delagrati, who was one of the coaches on season 4 of The Ultimate Fighter. I should say coaches in quotes because it was kind of an obscure season in that there was no team leader that wasn't competing. Guys were just on separate teams, and there were coaches who were there to work with everybody. But did you have much interaction with Mark on the show or since the show?
Oh yeah. We love Mark. Mark was great. Just super positive and there just to help. Just was very selfless, didn't care about his, not reputation, but the glory he was getting. He was just there to help people out and, just teach. We like that. We were very fortunate. We had George St. Pierre there, got the same mentality, and Randy Couture. So the coaches there were phenomenal, man, and it was just an honor for me to be around. Like people like that and great fighters. I was the only time really in my career I got to go be around coaches and other trainers that have like true fight camp. I feel like it was amazing. So I loved it. And Del Grotti was great, man. I still just, anytime I see him, just nothing but respect. We got to interact a lot. I think we have a really good relationship rapport now. Don't get to see him very much, but just whenever I do, it's always a good time.
I mean, nobody sees that guy very much. He's all over the place. I mean, he's in the truck at the UFC and he's running gyms all over the country. Luckily, we get to see him once or twice a year. He comes down and does a seminar with us, and it's always a great time. He's a hilarious guy. He's a wealth of knowledge. And yeah, I mean, you can't do much better of a coaching staff than that for the Ultimate Fighter.
It was perfect. It was funny. Like everybody, respected Randy and them so much. He could have told us to do anything. Like he'd been like, okay, there's a lake over there with alligators. Swim to the other side. And we'd have been like, damn it, all right, man. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to do it, but I'm going to because Randy asked. You know what I mean? So it was just, it was good.
I have like being a New Yorker who moved to Florida, I have like a weird thing about alligators. It's weird, like seeing them all over the place. But yeah, if Randy Couture asked me to jump in a lake, I would do the same thing. I'd be like, all right, I guess, I mean, you're the natural. I don't want
to, but I'm going to do it. All I got to do is be faster than the guy behind me.
Yeah. I mean, Captain America tells you to get in with some alligators, you do it. Exactly. All right. I don't mean to bounce around on you, but I'm going to backtrack just a little bit because I have a specific story question I wanted to ask you about, and it has to do with your fight with Joe Riggs. It was one of the only times you were stopped, and it was due to a cut. Another thing that's kind of a commonality, I had a similar thing happen to me just a few months ago. I was rolling with a guy, and I was trying to pass his guard, very similar to what happened to you with Joe. And just the resistance, and I was putting too much pressure. It was slippery, and then up comes the elbow, blood everywhere.
Yeah.
So not so much about the fight and the cut and everything like that, but the way I heard you tell the story is you had to be at a wedding the day after this fight. Is that true?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Well, hold on. I can't remember if it was the day after the wedding or if the wedding was the day after that, but I had to travel. I think, okay, so what it was is I had to travel to Flagstaff, Arizona. So, I mean, after the fight, I'm not in a good mood. Go out and have a few drinks, party, stay up late.
Sure.
Go get on a plane first thing in the morning, fly to Phoenix, rent a car, drive up to Flagstaff, where the wedding party was. And everybody, when they saw me, like, I didn't, obviously, I knew my buddy very well and some of his friends and family, but like the other people's family, his new wife, they were looking at me like, what the hell is going on here? Because I had this big, first of all, Joe Riggs, phenomenal fighter, just heavy-handed as hell. And I don't know if you remember watching that fight, like there's a lot of funny stories about this fight. We were good friends before the fight, good friends afterwards, but like, he's on top of me at the end of the first round, and somehow he just hit me with the hell of a good punch. Like I think right on my right eye, ding! Like I remember, it's funny. I'm on the ground, and all of a sudden you see, and I sit up, and my hands are right down at my waist, and I sit up, I look over the right, and I was like I just remember, bing, and I didn't know it was going. I look over and I look back, and I see him rearing back to punch me in the face again. I was like, oh shit! So then I realized I'm in a fight. You know what I mean? So I kind of went back, and then I remember after that first round, I get up and I'm wobbly, and I'm kind of hopping aside. My corner grabbed me and pulled me over. And Joe says that like it's his first time making that weight, and he said he was totally gassed. He's like, oh my God, I got nothing left. I'm done after this first round. He said he's over there in the corner, and he said Rich Franklin's like, don't worry, Joe, he's not coming out the second round. He was hurt at the end of that first round. He's not coming out of the corner. And Joe said he looked over his shoulder, and he said he sees me over there bouncing because my coach told me, stay on your feet. You're not sitting on the stool because he was hurt. So he looked over and I'm bouncing. He's like, man, he ain't hurt. He's like, damn it, don't lie to me. So he goes out there, takes me down. I get on top right away. And I'm like, I could just tell he was pretty done, like I could just tell he didn't have much juice left. I was like, okay, I'm going to pass his guard and this is going to be no problem. So I started to pass his guard. He hits me with that, like, I'm leaning. He hit me with that elbow, and it just immediately, like, I could just tell, like, my head went down, and I just saw blood. I was like, oh, this ain't good, man. This is not good. And, the hilarious part about that, I'll never forget this. I'm just sitting there, and the referee comes and goes, break. And I think it was John McCarthy. And so they get the doctor in there, and they're putting stuff on my head, and they're doing all this stuff. And I remember at one point I go, I think I can keep going. I think I'll be all right. And Jay goes, what? I go, I think I can fight. And he goes, the fight's over. And I kind of open my eyes. I look, and like the ring card girls are in. I was like, oh shit, it's been over for about a minute. I had no idea. I thought we were seeing if I could keep going. You know what I mean? But it was funny. So yeah, I go up to that. I go up to Flagstaff, and man, my face was a wreck. I had this big cut. I had a black eye from when he punched me the first time, and then this big, like 3-pronged thing that blew up from the elbow. So I had stitches here and I had big black eyebrows. I was like, who the hell are you friends with? Talking to my buddy, like, what is wrong with this guy? Did he get in a street fight? They're like, nah, but he just fought in the UFC. Man, I had black eye. It was bad.
Yeah, but I mean, so my follow-up question, which you already kind of answered, is this the type of friend that was like, oh man, what are you doing? This is my wedding, or like, oh, this is awesome. I have you coming off a UFC fight and you're going to be in my wedding party. Like with the battle scars.
Not that Indy is the roughest town, but I'm from the south side of Indy, which is most of our people there are a different breed of people. So no, they there was no what are you doing, man? They'd be like, what are you not doing with a black eye? They would expect nothing less. You know what I mean? So it was funny. I just talked to him. The wedding was in Flagstaff. He lives in Durango now, and he kind of had a little altercation with somebody not long ago about his girlfriend. He was like, man, Chris, these people aren't like us. Like, people got mad when the guys give my girlfriend some prom. I slammed him up against the wall, and everybody's like, I cannot believe you would resort to violence. He's like, what? We're not like these people, Chris. Well, I need help back here. I need somebody to have my back out here because these people are not like me. Like, I know, man, it's just a different mentality. So, no, there was definitely no, what are you doing, Chris? Why do you have black eyes? They would expect nothing less.
Yeah, that's what I figured. I mean, if it's somebody you were close enough with to be in their wedding party, they must have known what they were getting when they asked you.
For sure.
It wasn't like some casual acquaintance like, oh, Chris, why don't you come be in what do you do for a living again?
Yeah. Now, they all knew. I said, man, I'm going to be coming straight from the fights. They're like, fine, whatever. Just make sure you show up.
Yeah. I mean, I have to check myself back into reality sometimes too. When I got that cut a few weeks ago, it was like a week later, I had to go to my daughter's kindergarten orientation.
Ooh, yep.
So here I am, I'm the parent showing up with the black eye and the, no stitches, but I had it super glued. And
That's nice.
yeah, dad of the year.
You know how many times, I mean, I was a firm believer in a lot of sparring. Like I'm an old school guy. Back in the 90s, early 2000s, like you just went harder. That's all you did. You just went hard all the time. So they've got a lot more feints now. Anyway, my point is, I had black eyes constantly. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I'm a roughneck when it comes to training, and I would just go in there and spar a lot. Knees, elbows would happen accidentally. Punch. I've had cuts in training. A lot of black eyes, but how many? I have 4 kids. You know how many events I went to with black eyes. People were always like, what is wrong with this guy? I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, we came up pretty similarly. Obviously, I didn't compete to the level that you did, but I believe in hard training as well. And there's mixed opinions on it, and who knows what the right way is. The right way is whatever works.
Exactly.
But we saw recently the evolution, like guys like Max Holloway, like, oh, I don't spar at all, and obviously he does great. And then guys like Sean Strickland, I spar every day, and he does great. Both world champions. So,
well, and here's the thing, though, you got to look at a guy like Max Holloway. How long did he spar? A lot. You know what I mean? Like you go through that, 10,000 hour thing, and now he might not need to as much because his eyes are in tune with his hands, and they see that. And you could throw a punch, and he can move out of the way 1 inch instead of 8 inches, getting you out of position and fire right back. But that had to come through hours and hours and hours of sparring, training, being in the gym. You can't. I've seen a lot of. It's funny. We've had a lot of guys. I do these tryouts. I'm talking about for bare knuckle. You have these guys who look great on the mitts. Oh man, they can hit the mitts well, and then you hit the bag well, and then all of a sudden they put them in a fight and they duck their head when punches come and they turn their head like he's not even seeing. He's going to get knocked out because he just doesn't understand how to spar or fight. He looks great on the mitts. So those are 2 different things. I think you have to. I think you have to have that sparring in to be great, but I don't know if you should keep doing it all the time because then you hit a lot, you have damage. It's not good.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, it's improved his eyes. When it comes to the mitt work, I have opinions on that as well. I hold a lot of pads, and I always tell my guys, like, I'm not here to hold pads for you so you can look good on Instagram. I'm here to help improve your skills. So I'm going to be throwing stuff back at you. I'll sweep you. I'll rough you up with the pads. Like we're simulating a fight. We're not trying to make you look like a UFC fighter.
Exactly. And that's, geez, in today's world, it's a different thing, man. People want to, it's not all about functionality. It's about influencers and how can I look? I don't know. It's just a different world.
Yeah. And there's the business side of the gym as well. There's a lot of people who are just there to get in shape and get a different workout, and they want to post to their social media, and that's great too. But the guys who say like, I want to be a fighter, it's like, all right, well then you got to train like one.
Yeah,
that's all there is to it. Let's see. I could go on and on taking a deep dive on your career, but I'm gonna fast forward a little bit more.
Okay.
So I want to make sure I have this year right. 2011, you submitted Dan Hardy, and then you decided that was it for MMA. At that point, what was going on at that time?
Man, I'd been, like I said, the Ultimate Fighter. I got close to the title. 1 fight away, lost a split decision. Had a couple other times. And before that, I thought it was pretty close. And then, I'd won 4 in a row. Before that, and I'd had hurt my knee before a fight. Anyway, certain things happened. I felt like, man, I just blew another. I was supposed to fight Carlos Condit, and the fight fell apart. And I was looking forward to that to maybe push me in the title hunt. So anyway, I took some time off to rehab my knee at one point, and I never missed the gym. I was always the guy who was not. I'm not gonna lose a fight because I'm not in shape. I miss a lot of basketball games, gymnastics, meets for my kids. I miss a lot of things because that's when I had to go to the gym. As soon as my kids got off school, at 5 o'clock, I'm at the gym. Religiously, I wasn't gonna miss because I was just gonna be there every day. And so during that time, little knee rehab, I got to go to a couple games and a couple gymnastics meets and a couple things. And, just the feeling I get people like, oh, Chris, it's good to see you. You're not usually here. I was like, damn, just seeing my kids were getting older and just knowing that these are times I'm not getting back. You know what I mean? Um, I think I was like, and so they called me to about the Dan Hardy fight. And I was like, yes, main event. I was very excited. I remember that day going to the gym was like the first time ever I had a, like, I don't want to be here. I mean, like, not that I don't want to be here. I was like, I shouldn't be here, man. I mean, my kid has a game today. I'm not there. It was the first time ever I had conflict, because every other time there was no doubt I'm going to the gym. But taking off a little bit and being around those things and start realizing, man, my son's in high school now. My daughter's in eighth grade. They're going to be gone soon, and I'm not going to. I realized that the relationship I had with them wasn't what it used to be because I've been busy. Work 48 hours a week, train full time, and go to fights. There's not a lot of time left over. I mean, like I said, the wife was going to work. She was able to be home a lot, but there was a price to pay. So after that training day, I remember I went back home and I kind of told my wife about it. And eventually we came up with, it's going to be my last fight. So that gave me the freedom to go there and say, okay, it's my last fight. I'm going to train my ass off as hard as I can. I'm going to win the fight. I'm going to do everything to win this fight because after this is it. So I'm gonna get all this family time back, but I have to do everything I can to win this fight because I'm not going out losing this fight. So that gave me the freedom. Then going to the gym the next 6 weeks was fine. I knew there was an end goal. So before that fight, I remember I sat down the day before the weigh-ins. I wrote out a letter to Dana White. And, it was like my resignation letter, pretty much, just thanking him for everything they did for me and my family. But this is it. Handed it to him at the weigh-ins, and it's tough because you want to win your last fight. You know what I mean? But you didn't know when I turned in my resignation letter that this was if I was going to win. You know what I mean? So it's easy to win. It's easy to win and walk out the sunset, but it was tough to make that decision before because you don't know if you're going to win or lose. So I was really happy with how getting that win, getting that victory. Dan's a tough guy, man. So I was happy. I mean, it was a great opponent who came to fight.
Oh yeah, incredible opponent. I mean, yeah, it's a tough balance, right? Because you had to put in all that work to provide a good life for your family, but you make that realization that you were missing out on some things. It's really a delicate balance, but it's maybe it's good you had that injury. You're able to make that realization, and then it says a lot about you as a competitor that you were able to make that decision before the fight and still go out and put the performance that you did because how many times have we heard the story, guys knew it was going to be their last fight and they just don't put in that work. But was it hard after the fact, after coming off of that performance to say like, this is really it, even though, obviously you're still competing with the best?
Yeah. I mean, that was very tough. I felt like I left a lot on the table there. I felt like I could have still been competing for years. But it's just a tough spot because I remember when I was boxing, when I was fighting, my coach would tell me like, Chris, just remember, we're not going to drive this car till the wheels fall off. I was like, I get it. I mean, when I started boxing, I remember seeing guys who were, whatever you want to say, punchy, had brain damage. They fought too much, and that scared me. And I'm like, man, it's not going to be that guy. But you know what? Everybody becomes that guy if you keep fighting. I promise. It just you don't realize it until it's too late, and then it's too late. And so, I remember after one of my boxing fights, it was a war, and the guy goes, "That's one. You got four more." I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "After 5 wars in the boxing, we're not. You're not doing any more fights." I was like, "All right," you know what I mean? So, which is nice. That means you have people around you who actually care about you as a person, not about making money off you. So,
Yeah.
that was big. And I always tell people, you gotta find people like that. You can't if they're pushing you to take bad fights, you're not around the right trainers and managers. You need to be around people who care about you. So, it was. People ask me like, well, would you make the same choice again? I was like, what choice is there to give up on my family and say, yeah, I know I'm not seeing you enough, but I don't care. I mean, I couldn't do that. I'm not gonna do that. So it wasn't much of a choice. It was just what it is. What it is. I realized things, and after you realize it, you can't go back and not realize it. So it just, I was 37. I'd been fighting for about 13 years, and It's a good way. And after I won that fight like that, I can't come back, man. My next sit off couldn't have been that good. I was the main event. I won the fight of the night. I won the sub of the night. I won the Harley Davidson. It was a perfect night.
Yeah, it sounds like a pretty good night. I'm glad to hear you say a lot of those things because I've been around combat sports a long time, not as long as you, obviously, but I've been around a lot of gyms and I've seen a lot of guys make bad decisions, and I've seen a lot of guys who made bad decisions for other people, and it's an unfortunate reality of the sport. But I'm glad to hear that you did have those good people around you and help you make you feel better about making that decision. That's
well, and I was always told, Chris, you're going to use fighting. Don't let fighting use you. And I've seen too many people who let boxing or whatever use them up, and they're at the end of their career and they need a payday, and they're the B side. They're getting beat. I mean, it's just like, man, you got to be smart about things. I always tell fighters, you plan your exit strategy. Like, what do you mean? Well, when you're fighting, what are you trying to do at the end? Do you want to own a gym? Do you want to be a trainer? Are you going to be a commentator? I mean, you have to. What are you going to do? How are you going to get out of this and do something? Because you're still going to have that fire and that competitive nature. What are you going to do? Because don't keep fighting. That's what most people do. I miss this feeling. I want it back. All right. Well, then you end up with brain damage and problems. So don't do that, man. Find a way to still be involved. That's what I've been doing. Like, as soon as I came back to bare knuckle, I was like, I want to commentate this. I'm 43, 44. I want to do some fights, and then I've got a unique knowledge. I've done boxing, MMA, and bare knuckle. Who else can you get to do this? Is going to know as much as me. I've been doing this for 20-some years. So they're like, all right, let me do it.
I mean, there's nobody else I would pick personally. But that's where I was getting to with that. So you retire after the Dan Hardy fight. 7 years later, I'm assuming, the kids are grown. That competitive itch is coming back. Here's what I want to know about it. How is this conversation with the family going? Because usually after retirement, it's like, honey, I want to buy these expensive golf clubs. It's not necessarily like, all that fighting I did, I'm thinking about doing it without any gloves on now. What do you think about this?
Well, here's what happened. So I'm at the gym. I still used to go to the gym a lot. It worked out better because then I started being able to go in the mornings when my kids were at school. So a couple of my kids were already in college. A couple were still in high school or whatnot. So I go to the gym, and one guy says, "Hey, man, you see this? Your buddy's with Joe Riggs, same guy who cut me open. You're friends with Joe Riggs. He's doing a bare knuckle fight in England." I said, "What the hell's wrong with Joe? Let me see that phone." So it's on Facebook, and I hit play, and yeah, he's fighting bare knuckle in like England. So I watched the fight. I'm like, does he need money? Is like, what's happening? So I watch it, and I'm like, after about the second round, I looked over at the guy and I was like, who do I talk to do this? And the guy was like, what? You were just talking about how stupid it was. And I was like, man, but now that I see it, it's not what I thought. I envisioned him in like a warehouse with like cars around with lights or bales of hay. I don't know. I just thought he was going to be in there. And it was technical, And then I was like, I got, as a guy who's been doing this forever, I got to do it. I got to do a fight. And so I got a hold of them. Eventually, they said yes. They were talking to my family, and my wife was like, we're not doing that. What are you talking about? And you talk about brain damage. You talk about being around. I was like, look, I'll train during the day now. When kids are home at night, I'll be here. And this is safer than boxing. They're like, no, it's not. I was like, look, you will get cut more, but you can't train the same. I can't be in there boxing the same way I can because I'll get cut open. You have to learn in and out motion. You have to hit them and don't get hit. I mean, it's like boxing on steroids as far as more precise, more perfect, more everything positive you have to be doing. That's the nature. Hit, don't get hit. If you sit there and trade, you're a fool. You're not going to win all your fights. You're probably going to win 50% of them, or maybe 70%, but you're going to lose them. So my wife said, well, you got to try it once. Go ahead. So I started going to the gym and just training. I had to change up my style because boxing, I'm a Mexican style fighter. Get inside and just, hard punches in your face, wear you down, win through attrition. But you can't do that in bare knuckle. So I had to change it up a lot. Remember, my main sparring partner was a guy who's 6'7". So I started working on getting in, getting out. So I just did that. Then, had that fight over in England. And then they hit me up here and said, hey, man, we have we're doing it in America. We started an organization. Will you do BKFC 1? And I was like, absolutely. What's the date? June 2nd. God dang it. My daughter's getting married that day. You know what I mean? I kind of tried to talk to the wife. Hey, do you think we can move the date? They didn't think it was funny. Not at all.
Yeah.
The final year, Chris, like, I know, I'm just kidding. I don't want you to move the date. So I told them, I said, Nate, I can't do the first one. I will do BKFC 2. And I did. So I did 2 and 4 and commentated in 3. And then after 4, I had wrist surgery and it kept me out for about a year. And after that, I just started taking over the full-time commentary. So I just enjoyed that a lot.
They couldn't move the date, but couldn't they move the venue and your daughter gets married in the squared circle?
Oh yeah, that could have that would have went over well. Yeah, bring her, take it out to Wyoming. I don't think they would have went for that. You know.
Yeah, for sure. So how did you? Is commentary something you always thought about doing, or was it once you got into the BKFC that you got into talks and was like, this is something I could do?
No, I've done commentary other places in the past. I've done the WBC before, done a lot of local shows.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, fortunately, like I said, I didn't have the brain damage where I can't recall things, can't talk well. I didn't have that. So I feel like I'm a fairly intelligent human being. I've been doing this since 1998. So if you have that kind of, knowledge of the sport and you've been doing it that long and you can still, basically, it was great when I went to BKFC. My partner Sean Willock, a great commentator, said, "Chris, you've been in corners many times. You've been the corner man." I said, "Yes." He goes, "Pretend you're the corner for both guys, but don't wait till the end of the round. Just tell them, oh man, you need to be throwing more jabs. Oh, I like the way you're throwing this jab in here. You're throwing this uppercut. It's real in, to keep doing that. Or man, you said you were going to throw a lot of jabs and you're not. You have to do that." So I was like, okay. So all I do is pretend I'm their corner man. What would I tell them if I'm in their corner? This is what you need to be doing. My job's not to, tell what they are. Oh, he's throwing right hands. Well, that's Sean's job to tell. I'm supposed to say how and why things are happening. So that's what I try to do. Pretend I'm the corner man. Just do it while I'm watching the fight.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how, and first of all, I'm a big fan of your commentary as well. I think you're doing a great job with the BKFC. I was watching the fights on Friday night. So you keep setting me up for these segues though, because you talk about all your experience, who's better to do this. So here's the question that I've kind of talked about with some friends. We see a lot of guys come from MMA and get into BKFC, and then we see a lot of boxers come over. And with MMA, we talk about, well, what's the best base? A lot of people think it's wrestling because you can dictate where the fight takes place. What do you think is a better base going into bare knuckle? Is it coming from MMA because you have the clinch and stuff, or is it coming from boxing because you have the in and out? And, what's your opinion on that?
I think, to be honest with you, I think it's been more MMA, and I wouldn't say necessarily because of the clinch. That's definitely a big aspect of it. But what I think more than anything is just the overall attitude and mentality that MMA fighters have. And I would just say, like I said, to be a good boxer, you have to be very athletic, and I think naturally gifted in certain ways, like long range, fast hands, and different things. But for MMA, I think it takes it like that wrestler mentality of that daily grind and just hard-nosed, tough individuals typically are good at MMA. And I think bare knuckle brings that because it's like I said, it's not a boxing match. It's not an MMA fight. It's some elements of a street fight, some elements of boxing, some elements of jiu-jitsu, just a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
It's that hard-nosed mentality that's hard to deal with, like a Mike Perry. Mike Perry shouldn't have beat Luke Rockhold on paper. Luke, bigger, stronger, landing a good punch on him and hurt him. But Mike Perry's just a dog. He's going to walk through your stuff and he's going to hit you as hard as he can. He's going to hurt you. So people like that are going to be good. It takes a certain level of raw, just madness to be good at bare knuckle, I think. And that's why I think MMA guys have that more so than boxers, in my opinion.
Yeah. I've always had the same opinion. And I tell people, like, look, boxing's in the name, but that doesn't mean it's a boxing match. It's just like this show. It's MMA on the rocks. I'm not drinking my whiskey on the rocks usually. So even the scoring is different than boxing, I would say. I always, the fight I reference is Artem Lobov and Paulie Malignaggi. Like, if that were a boxing match, it probably would have been pretty one-sided if they're wearing the big gloves and, Paulie was able to work his game a little bit. And he thought at the end, like, I think he genuinely believed, he outpointed Artem in that fight. But then you look and there's the damage. You gotta account for the damage that's being done there. Am I kind of on track with that in terms of the judging between BKFC and Queensberry boxing?
And there's a thing, even with boxing, I have a lot of problems sometimes where what are they looking for? They're looking for the guy who's effectively counterpuncher. I'm looking for the guy who's aggressive. I'm looking for the guy who's, landing more shots. I don't know. It just depends on the judges. That's why you can get some wildly different scores in boxing. So it really leads me to one thing I'm a huge fan of. We've done it in a few states. I'm so for it, and I'm really trying to push it for BKFC is the open live scoring, where they score each round and you see what the score is afterwards. That way, if I'm landing jabs and I'm winning, I know it. If I'm landing these jabs and they're landing the punches and I'm losing, I can adjust. That's what you need to have is an adjustment, be able to adjust on the fly. You wouldn't have a basketball game where you're like, what's the score at the end? Do we win by 3? No, you lost by 2. Oh, we thought we won. I mean, it's for the fighters not to know the score, or at least the coaches. Like our system of bare knuckle we've done in the past, you have outside they show the score so the coaches can see it. They can tell the fighter whatever they want. They don't have to tell them they're winning. They don't have to tell them losing, but they can say, okay, like if they see they're down 3 rounds to none, they can say you have to get a knockout. Or if they see it's tied, they can be like they can say whatever they want. They can tell them it's tied. They can tell them anything, and it really works well. And I know I'm really going to try to push to implement that in every state we go in, but that is up to the state commission. But we're going to push that. That's a good one because, man, it makes it. You just want to be informed and you want to be able to adjust out there. If I'm losing a fight and I'm landing all my jabs, but he's pushing forward, I have to adjust, and vice versa. You can always keep doing the same thing. I can change, but you want to know because we get a lot of people. Both guys think they win. I push forward the whole time. The other guy's like, I landed good jabs the whole time. So you just don't know what the judges are looking for until it's too late.
Right. And when you're in there, it's hard to think about like, how's somebody else seeing this?
Yeah. But I mean, it's hard to change. But another thing, I can be watching a fight. Let's say I'm the third to last fight, and I can watch the first 2 prelims. And let's say they get knockout in the 4th round. That's true, but you did see the first 3 rounds scoring. So you can say, well, the guy who was pushing forward the whole time was winning. I got to know that now, so I can, even if those rounds before me are the fights into knockout, I will still know how the scorecards. I mean, if the first 3 fights into knockouts, you will never know what the scores were. You'll never see until one actually goes to the distance. So just having that open live scoring would help immensely in many ways. So I can know as a fighter, man, if this guy's pushing forward, I got to do something different because he's probably going to win I have to really land clean, and I just know what I have to do. It's all I ask is you understand going out there, what's online and what you have to do.
And in this scenario, let me just clarify. You're saying that the coaches can see the score, but it's up to them whether or not they tell the fighter what the score is.
Can't see it. We've had coaches who said, "Man, it's close. It's close," even though they're fighters winning all the rounds. So that's up to the coaches. We don't. That's not up to us to tell them. You have to give them this information. Whatever you do as a coach to motivate your fighters, what you do. But I remember when Joey Beltran was fighting against Marcel Stamps, he lost the first 3 rounds, and they told him, "Hey, you've lost all 3 rounds. You got to do something." He went out there and stopped him in the 4th round. So it's like, yeah, it helps to know the score. It's like there's no other sport nowadays that doesn't tell you the score. Why would you not let fighters know it, or at least the coaches? They can. It's just crazy to me that we haven't. I mean, we're still basically acting like we're it's 1800s when it comes to boxing because, well, that's how we've always done it. That's true, but why would you want to keep doing it like that if you can fix it and make it better?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, and the judging is something that comes up in conversation all the time for MMA and boxing and bare knuckle and every combat sport. So let me see here. I have a good buddy of mine and a training partner who competes in BKFC. You might have heard of him. His name is Dave Mundell.
Oh man, Dave Mundell, killing it.
And he's going to be defending his middleweight championship next month in Orlando. I'm sure you're going to be there.
Can't wait.
I'm going to be there as well.
Nice.
I'm sorry. What were you going to say?
I said, nice. He's going against Cold Red, Doug Coltrane.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be a great fight. I mean, Dave is the most unassuming guy because when you talk to him, he's like the most laid back person in the world. You wouldn't think he had energy for anything. And then he gets in there and it's like, who woke up this grizzly bear?
But you know what? He's so smart and so efficient with how he fights. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't waste any energy, doesn't waste any punches, does a great job. He's our best guy, I think. He makes you fight his fight. He's going to control the pace, winning where you fight, and he's got good defense, and he can hit hard enough to where people have to fight when he does a good job of dictating everything. So when you control when and where the fight happens, you're going to win almost all the time. That's why he's the champ right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's always had a mentality of, he definitely believes in his skills. I remember when he was first starting to do this, and I always want to support teammates and like, hey, whatever you want to do, I got your back, brother. And then he tells me he's going to fight Hector Lombard with no gloves. And I was like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah, but you know what? He lost. Was that a split decision or unanimous? Was that a very close fight? I mean, I thought that could win either way.
I'm biased. I thought he won. I thought he won it 3-2. Hector won the decision.
It was, yeah.
But he also, he had, all about this too. He had to go up in weight, and then Hector kept asking for the weight to go higher and higher.
Yep.
But Dave doesn't care. He's just like, all right, 205, 215. All right, 220. What do you want to do? Just let me get in there. I mean,
you ain't getting out of this fight that easy. I'll go up and wait. Is exactly what his mentality was.
Oh yeah, I mean, he wasn't going to walk away from that. No chance. And that was his only loss. And in my book, that's a moral victory. You get in there with Hector Lombard with no gloves on, and you lose a controversial decision.
Yeah.
And here's what I want to see. You mentioned Mike Perry before. I want to see Dave and Mike. They have a history. They fought as amateurs. And I know I'm biased, but I mean, I think that would be a fantastic fight.
Oh yeah. I mean, you have to think it's going to happen at some point. You know what I mean? If both guys keep winning, they're going to have to do it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think it would be so much fun. I mean, those guys, they have so much history. They've trained together in the past, and I know Mike is the flashy guy, and Dave is like the more like quiet, keeps to himself, does his talking in the ring. But man, it would be fireworks if those two got in there. I would be so thrilled.
Yeah, me too. That'd be fantastic. Like I said, I think there's a good possibility that happens at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I should hope so. I know Mike is off being like the backup fighter for the Logan. Is it Logan Paul? I don't know.
Yeah, versus Dylan or whatever.
Dylan Dennis.
I don't think that fight will happen, man.
It doesn't seem like it. It's just that stuff has all just gotten awkward at this point.
I mean, Dylan's not known as a stand-up guy at all. This is just about, he was Connor's guy. He's got a name. I mean, I understand the whole just entertainment value of this fighting, but yeah, it's gotten out of control, I think. I mean, it is what it is, though. It's reality, the period we're going through.
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to do?
Absolutely. I have another good buddy of mine I have to bring up while I'm talking to you. He was my boxing coach for a while, J.R. Ridge, who just fought for the flyweight championship. JR, another great guy. He's just like a ball of energy, such a positive dude. I was so happy to see him get that opportunity to get in there with John Dodson. Didn't go his way, but I know he's looking to turn it around and get right back in there with him.
Man, I mean, the amazing thing about the fight game is how many good people there are there. And by good people, I mean good human beings. It's just everybody would think that these fighters are nothing but mean guys. There's about 3 out of 100 that are bad. You know what I mean? It's like most of these guys are really good. JR is a great guy, super nice. I saw him after his last fight. I went over for breakfast and he was there, and just a happy, just a good person. So, you know what I mean? It's not what a lot of people would think. Most fighters are just good people.
Yeah. JR is such a good dude. I love that guy to death. And he's a really great trainer too. I mean, as good as he is at fighting, like he really knows how to bring the best out of people in the gym. He's a wizard with the mitts. He's the guy that'll make you look good on Instagram too. I mean, he'll push you, but he can make you look flashy. He's made my hands look quick, and I don't have fast hands, Chris. Nobody's.
I love it.
Let me see here. Yeah, so you're gonna be in Orlando in November, I'm assuming. I plan on being there as well. Your buddy Mike Davis, who does the Lytes Out podcast with you and introduced us, which I really appreciate. Tell me a little bit about the podcast, and then I'll wrap it up with you.
Sure. Lytes Out Podcast, something we've been doing for a while now, and it's just me and Michael get together. He's been around forever. I started in 1998, so it was just in the infancy of this sport of MMA. So we have a lot of funny stories, and so we tell these stories. We're like, man, it's gonna suck here soon. Like, this era is over. Like, the era of people who were there at the beginning is over. You know what I mean? So these stories are all going to die. People aren't going to know them. So we're like, we need to record some of these. So we started trying to get some old school guys and put them on the Lytes Out podcast. It's a historic podcast. And it's funny, we've had a lot of people, from UFC 1, from UFC 5, from UFC 12, just all the old school guys, and, just the amazing stories they have to say. And we put some newer guys on there too. But, man, we've just had a lot of I love the old school stories, just about how the sport came to be. And, people with stories like me about fights not being on their record. Or I remember one of the guys had one. He said, like, if you look it up on Tapology, I think it said like the Cold House fight. And it's like, what's that? And he's like, well, we were supposed to fight somewhere, and we got, like, they wouldn't allow us. So we just found some old abandoned house. And it was up in like Minnesota. And we put some mats down, and we fought in like this big living room, and it was a cold house. So it was like and like that. I was like, that's unbelievable. Like, people were standing by the register so fighters didn't fall into it. It was just like, but that's where it came from. People, like, we tried to put on a fight, we couldn't, so we just grabbed a house that was abandoned. I was like, man, you wouldn't do that stuff nowadays. I mean, it's just madness that people used to do. And I remember having 5 fights in a month once. I mean, just Nick Thompson, I remember talking about, he came to the gym for 2 weeks and took a fight then and lost. And, then he, trained another week and he fought again. Like, his record started off, he was like 3-8 or something, or 4-8. I'm like, man, that's not a good record. But he fought 12 tough guys. Like, people will never do that again. That's never the way it's going to be. I mean, he made it to the UFC eventually and was just a great fighter, but like a rocky start, because you were learning in the cage. That was like a training. So you're like, oh, I just learned you can't kick out. Like, yeah, you just didn't know anything back then, and you learned by fighting. It was just hilarious. So I love hearing those old stories. So if you want to hear some hysterical, funny stories and just hear how people got started in this Lytes Out podcast.
Yeah, I'm glad I found it. I only found it recently when I was starting to look up, I was doing my research when I knew I was going to talk to you. And I actually decided to reach out because of JR. I saw on his Instagram story, he was wishing you a happy birthday. I was like, let me see what Chris Lytle's up to. I was like, this guy has his own podcast. He's got a bourbon. I need to have a conversation with this man. He's a friggin' legend of combat sports. He's done it all. We got to talk here.
My man, thank you. It's great.
So yeah, I definitely recommend the Lytes Out podcast. I've caught up on a lot of the episodes.
Yeah, I got a train coming. Hold on, let me get inside.
It's all good.
Still loud. Sorry.
It's all good.
You can't plan for that. So. Wow, hold on. How do you mute this? Hold on.
Yeah, so the Lytes Out podcast, I definitely recommend. I listened to a bunch of the episodes. The Dan Henderson episode was incredible. One of my favorite stories was your episode doing a deep dive on your career, and Jeremy Horn was on there, and he talked about how he had to fight in the rain one time and how the cage was so wet. He was in the guy's garden and he could push him across the cage like a slip and slide.
Yeah, yeah. Who was that? Who said that?
That was Jeremy Horn.
Oh, I think Chael Sonnen talked about the time he fought, and it was like, you remember the movie Here Comes the Boom, where like part of the cage breaks?
Yeah.
I thought something like that happened to him. I think it was him, maybe it was somebody else. But yeah, the cage is kind of broken over on one side, so he kind of had to avoid it. Oh, that's hilarious, man. How can that be real? It was, man. That stuff used to happen.
Yeah, I mean, you guys covered so much history on that podcast. Obviously, you have all your knowledge. Mike is like an encyclopedia of MMA, it seems, unless he's just super good at his research. But his questions are so specific.
Oh, he does. He's called the MMA detective for a reason. Like, he will get in there, and not only will he look stuff up like you did, but he will like call people that they know, like try and find background stories, and won't let the people know that he's doing research about it. But he'll like, hey man, give me something that nobody else knows about this guy, so we can bring it up and have him be like, what did you say? You know what I mean? Like, there'll be it's hilarious when he's a detective, man. He will spend hours doing research.
Yeah, well, it's a great dynamic you guys have on the podcast because you have all his research, and then you bring this element of just experience. You've been there, done that, and just like a genuine curiosity and passion for the content. And it really melts together well.
Thank you. Well, like I said, I want to know. I know what I was doing, but I want to hear other people's story, man. That stuff, and I can identify with it because I remember what it was like back then. A lot of people now would never understand. Well, just go to MMA gym. MMA wasn't the term. It was called NHB. It was no holds barred. There was no MMA. You didn't have a gym to go to. There was no MMA gym. You'd go to a karate gym or a jiu-jitsu place or a boxing. You had to go to multiple gyms. You know what I mean? Like, and you went to like a seminar in California to learn something. I mean, it was a different era.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, the podcast is great. The broadcasting is great. I'm sure the bourbon is great. Can't wait to try it someday.
Thank you.
I mean, much success with everything. And that's another reason I reached out, because listening to the podcast and listening to you do the broadcasting, you have a skill that not everybody has, in that you're not able to just tell great stories, but you're able to listen as well. And that's a really important skill that, not everybody develops when it comes to getting into broadcasting and podcasting. Like, everybody's got a podcast now, but some people just like to talk. Not everybody likes to listen. And you definitely have that quality. Even the episodes that were deep dives on your career, you were really thoughtful about hearing the questions and giving great stories in response. So, I mean, I was trying not to kiss your ass too much during this interview, but I've been a big fan. I've followed your career a long time, through the fighting, through the broadcasting, through everything. And I appreciate your time today, my man.
Man, I appreciate you having me. And thank you for watching. There's more to come, man. As far as, obviously the fight career is over, but I'm really loving doing these tryouts. I'm sure we'll have a tryout in Florida at some point. So, man, and anywhere else, anybody want to get involved, please do. Come check it out. And I look forward to having you come to the fight. I mean, that's at the Mr. Olympia. That's going to be a legit fight, a legit card on November 3rd. I can't wait for it.
You think we can get any of these Mr. Olympians to come jump in the ring? And
nah, they won't jump in the ring. They're not that stupid, but they might come watch. I mean, I guarantee I'll get some people to come watch. They'll love it. But it's funny. Whenever I can see people like that, they'll be like, they'll love watching. Like, man, you guys are crazy. I don't want anything to do with that. Most athletes understand how tough it is. I remember we had Shaquille O'Neal. He was doing a commentary with us once for one of the fights in Mississippi, and he's like, "Man, you guys train so hard." He's like, "It's so hard, and you guys are such great athletes. What you guys are doing." He gets it. You know what I mean? He said,
"Oh, for sure, yeah." I'm sure there's a lot of mutual respect there. Is there anything else you need to plug, or any other shout outs?
Man, you guys covered the thing. Man, it's funny. Like, now, I'm dedicated to BKFC. I love what we have going on. It reminds me of the UFC in the early days, as far as we're growing, and people want to see us. And I think the more people watch, the more like, man, this is entertaining. I think it's more entertaining personally. How many guys, when MMA, like if they're watching a UFC fight, the fight goes to the ground, like, I mean, people have gotten so good on the ground now, it's hard to get good submissions, a lot of just nothing. So people just want to see stand up. And I'm like, you're a bare knuckle fan. You don't even know it. You know what I mean? You don't realize it because you haven't seen bare knuckle. But once you see, like, man, that was fast paced. That was fun.
Yeah.
I'm dedicated to making this grow. And like I said, it's safer, in my opinion, for the fighters. You might get cut more, but you're not getting any of the brain damage, which is all I care about. And I just want to be in an organization that's going to help try and take care of the fighters and make everybody's give their dreams happen and make their lives better.
That's awesome, man. And yeah, I was one of the ones who was a little skeptical at first when I heard about this bare knuckle fight, but I was fortunate enough to be around guys who were brave enough to get in there and see it up close. I've been at many of the events here in Tampa and Orlando, and I've got to see my training partners compete and talk to them about it afterwards. We have conversations that I wouldn't even have, on the air and stuff. And it made me feel a lot better about it. And I feel like if you just get people to watch it, people will come around for sure.
Well, like I said, I was the first one to admit, I was like, what the hell's wrong with these people? Why would you? What? And then I watched it and everything changed. I was like, okay, this is skill. This is different than what I thought. And started thinking about doing the research. I was like, man, this is safer. I mean, that's one of my biggest, not fears is the right word, but things that I don't like about fighting is when especially boxing, all my favorite boxers, every one of them's got brain damage. They don't talk right. They're not good. I'm like, man, I don't want that to happen to people, especially you're going to get all these older MMA guys who right now see, oh my God, if I come out and have a boxing match, I can make a lot of money. Yeah, but you're going to get wrecked. I mean, you're going to get with these big gloves and hit in the head when you're slower and older. Now you're going to hit 30 times around.
Yep.
I don't want to see that, man. Come to bare knuckle, get hit, get cut, fine. But you're not going to take the brain damage from boxing. That's what's scary. I think I had over 100 fights. I think I had a concussion once, and it was in a boxing match. Never had any problems. It wasn't even a bad concussion. It was like if I closed my eyes, I'd be like, oh, started to get dizzy. But, I mean, that was it.
Yeah.
I never had problems. But, I mean, the one time I did have anything, it was from boxing.
Yeah. Even like in sparring, you got the 16-ounce gloves on, and you think like, oh, I could throw full power. And then the next thing, you got a training partner that's out. For a couple of weeks or whatever.
Bad, yeah.
And I noticed when the guys started doing the bare knuckle, we started, all right, let's do some sparring rounds without gloves. And, we're not really touching, but just like, oh, I know I can touch you here, or I know I can get this angle, and things like that. So you get smarter about it. Well, again, Chris, I appreciate it. Great stories, great conversation. If I see you in Orlando, the first round of bourbon is on me, sir.
My man.
And I'm going to play our outro, and if you just stick around for one more minute. Chris Lytle, ladies and gentlemen. Until next time. Cheers, everybody. Bye.